Hello and welcome everyone to the Women in Leadership Talk podcast. Super excited today. We have Liz Radzick joining us. And Liz, welcome. So happy to have you here.
So great to be here, Vicki. Thank you for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Well, we have such a treat for you today. Liz, let me give you a little background on her before we jump into our conversation. But Liz is the president of Manifest Consulting, and she is an executive speech coach. She's an expert in actually coaching high achieving executives, managers, entrepreneurs, and salespeople to help them influence and persuade their audiences. She has specialties in radio and TV appearances and interviews. Okay, Liz, I'm ready. Let's go. She also helps CEOs with their annual general meetings, which is, that's super stressful and need to be really poised in that. Town hall meetings, preparing you for interviews, and a number of other types of events where you've got to be able to influence and persuade your audience. In addition to coaching two entrepreneurs on their successful pitches for capital on CBC's Dragon's Den. Now that's exciting. She's delivered innovative, engaging workshops and communication skills and coaching for 25 years to thousands of individuals in Canada, in the US, and Italy. She has a unique background in classical music, dance, and comedy improv. I can't even say it, improvisation. And her approach is both creative and bottom line. So that's a mix of great talent. So you're pulling a lot of different things together. I love it. And just to top that off, her client list includes CIBC, Bayer, RioCan, Manulife, and a number of other major corporations, both Canada, US, and Italy. So Liz, welcome. We are thrilled to have you here today.
I'm so excited to be here, Vicki. Thank you. And there's nothing that starts my day off by hearing someone else rave about how great I am. So we could do this daily if you've got the bandwidth, we can talk.
Love it. I know it makes you feel good, right? It's a great way to start the day.
It does. It's like, wow. I mean, I think all our mirror neurons are a bit starved these days for positive feedback. So thank you. And yeah, I am kind of a Heinz 57 mutt in terms of my background, and we'll probably end up talking about that, but delighted to be here.
Yeah, well, I love that because that's what makes you unique. That's what gives you all these experiences in, being able to help the people that you're helping. And you're used to being at front and center, right? Like having to, have audiences engage with you and bringing great memories and excitement to their life. And so you'd be a great coach to help others to do that. So let's jump in here. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Why you chose, I know you left the industry of dance and music. So why did you choose to do speaking and helping executives really hone those presentation skills?
Yeah, it's to maybe fill in the blanks. I was going to be a classical flutist. Mm-hmm. My plan was to have a music performance career. I was going to be in an orchestra pit or being on stage and performing. And I ended up with tendonitis in my second year of university. So, I was 19 years old. Things didn't resolve to the point where I could resume playing on a professional level. And as it turns out, Plan B, I now feel is where I was supposed to be. I was a really nervous player. I'll admit that. Had terrible anxiety. Sometimes even feeling like I was leaving my body and then all of a sudden slamming into my body. I used to do recitals as a little girl on piano, and I remember getting dressed in the frilly dress and going up to the big piano, and I'd be sitting there playing, and all of a sudden I would kind of walk out of my body and drift up, and I'd see my hands and then slam back in. They call that dissociation now, but at the time, wow. It was so out of body experience for me. And I just thought that's what nerves were. I thought that's, the way it was when you performed. And so that carried into my university years. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things very correctly. Classical music, unlike maybe other music traditions like folk music or jazz, it has a real set of rules about how you need to behave and how the music is to be played correctly. And there's a whole body of theory around how that should be. And I just really felt that pressure. I mean, I loved music, I loved playing, but when I got up to perform, even though I competed in Kiwanis and I won awards, I felt really, really stressed inside. And that was a lot of my experience through my teens and into university. So fast forward, I'm now no longer playing. I ended up landing a wonderful job with a woman who ran her own business that was a combination of speech language pathology and communication training. And she was dialing one down while raising the other. And I was with her for 10 years. And that's it, kind of like it found me. I wish I could tell you it would be revisionist for sure if I said, oh no, the plan was always, to do a consulting career. But I think we all admit that classical flute too, management consulting and training is not the most direct career path.
Definitely not.
I think it found me, to be honest. And what I really identify with is the people who are in positions where they have complex material that they need to get across, either to get budget, to get buy-in, like Dragon's Den, or it could be something as simple as you're on a committee and you're trying to float the theme idea for your year-end fundraiser. How do you get buy-in for that? So I really identify with the pressure of that. And I know it's kind of the loneliness of the long distance runner, to be that person who's sitting alone, writing things out or typing, going, how do I get this through so that they understand or they see? And then on top of that, having the physical nervousness hamstring you. So it's a lot. And I guess I really identify with that.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's the best coach, right? Or consultant. When you've lived it and you've experienced it, you can certainly, have more empathy, but also be more objective to how to make that happen, how to pull it together. That's awesome. So I love how you segued from, being in classical music into now this beautiful role that you have in helping others. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you find or you have found in regards to, people public speaking? Like I hear this all the time from clients. They're like, oh my God, no, I can't get up in front of people and talk. Or they feel like they're like the target, right?
Right.
So what are you finding?
Over 25 years, it's been largely, as I say, the pressure. So particularly if you're someone who's a subject matter expert, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're in tech, typically the people I've worked with historically fall into three buckets. I've got the entrepreneur bucket. I've got the people who are finance/tech, so complex dashboards, project management, snapshots, Gantt charts, a lot of data. And then I've got the pharmaceutical people who are, having to deal with sales teams and having to get really dry messages, motivational, and get people excited about it. So it's not just about comprehension. You can get snarled in any kind of number of places with any of those. So it's partly, how do I get the data all clear? What is enough? I mean, back in the days when we traveled a lot, I'm sure your listeners can identify with this. You're trying to board the plane, and in front of you is someone trying to jam a bag into the overhead that clearly is exceeding its capacity. And we all know that this person, consciously or unconsciously, is in fantasy about how much they can fit into that overhead bin, but we have to wait while they're doing it. And I'm sure I can speak for myself. I've been that person, like, no, I'm sure it will fit. So it's a very human thing. We're not really great at estimating how much fits into a container. And so take that to a presentation. Here I am, and I've been given 15-minute window. Used to be you'd get a half hour, an hour. What's changed, I've found in the last 2 years, is the window is getting much smaller. So now it's not uncommon, especially if the speakers in front of you go too long. So, Vicki, I know we were going to give you 25 minutes, but could you just wrap it up in 7? So that's a huge stress and a pressure. And if you haven't prepared the way that you're going to communicate, to change it at the last minute, guess what the number one strategy is for most people? If you knew you had to go from 25 minutes to 7 minutes, what are you going to do?
I'm going to speed through it.
You betcha. Oh, yeah. It's
fast.
like, zoom, we
Yep.
are like, eat my dust. I'm going. And you're going to flip through things and go, oh, never mind this, and skip through your slides. And you're going to feel rattled.
Yeah. And it's going to come across that way to the audience for sure.
So absolutely. And then you're going to feel even more rattled because you know you're rattled. So the first challenge is always, how much can I fit into whatever the container is, the 10, the 15? Is it a TED Talk style? Is it a town hall where you have to be able to engage and speak for a whole 45 minutes or an hour? How much is enough? How do you get that in the right order? Kind of like, I guess I always love food analogies, but what are the servings? You know, you don't necessarily serve the dessert first. Although I do have a friend.
Really?
Yeah, I can tell you.
Yeah, we're connected, Liz.
Trips to the Cheesecake Factory where we may have inverted the order, but that was a conscious decision. Yeah, where it's like, what are we going to serve first? The soup, the salad, then the main, then the pasta, then the, whatever. And so how do we line that up? Yeah. And I think what happens to a lot of people is we make the mistake, and this is certainly true for me, ongoing, we design for ourselves. We think, oh, this is how I understand it. This is how I need to hear it. And that can work if you're talking to a group of people who are like-minded. So I know, Vicki, your background is in retail. So let's say you're deciding to do a morning floor presentation to your team about, what the goals are for today. You live, breathe, eat, selling on the floor or merchandising or whatever area of specialty you're talking on. And so you're going to orient that way. That's no problem. The problem is if you're someone who, say, is in information security and you're talking to someone in operations, they may not have the same orientation as you. And if you go in with the level of detail and complexity and the frame and figuring that they understand everything that you've learned in your 10, 15, 20 years of doing what you do, you're not going to get that connection. And ultimately, that's what I feel is the goal, period. Connection. It's not about impressing, although we may put pressure on ourselves to do that. That certainly was my music career. We may think that it's about getting promoted. We may think it's about getting approval, getting positive feedback from our boss. Are those things important? Absolutely. But just like, I don't think if you're an Olympic athlete, and I'm not an Olympic athlete, I've seen competitors who, when they go in and it's all about winning rather than enjoying and connecting and having something other than the end goal. Always that's in your mind. Of course you want to do well, but by focusing on that, it can eclipse all of this other available energy and freedom that I think makes us authentic. And I think one of the challenges are, in answer to your question, it's being authentic, showing up the way we really want to be with so much data, so little time, and the pressures of whatever the situation are. How do I actually not come across like a robot or reading a script or flat?
Yeah, I love that. I love what you've just shared there, Liz. So a couple of things you brought up that I think are important. One is how do you go from 25 to 7, right? Because attention span, even like, especially the last 2 years with everybody being on virtually, that attention span has gone from, here to here very quickly. So I love that you brought that up. The other thing that you just shared there that I think is so important is, what is your intention? What do you really want the audience to walk away with? And I'm definitely, connection is in my lifeblood. I love that. And can connect with anybody, whether it's the CEO or the janitor. It doesn't matter what your title is, but it's like, if we spent more time doing that and connecting with people, that is where the authenticity comes in. So I love that you shared that. Thank you.
So well, I just to let you, behind the curtain, for people who think that someone who has worked in communication training for 25 years, they don't get nervous anymore. Hockey pucky. Yeah. Like, oh no. I mean, coming here today, I always feel this was true for me in music as well. There's a heightened energy, right? There's an excitement, there's a quickening of energy that happens as we know we're going to connect, we're going to be in a situation that, let's face it, doing virtual conversations is really, really weird. And most people, the people that I've worked with, it was weird enough having to stand up in front of a room full of people in a suit or a dress and a podium and microphones and teleprompters. That's weird enough. Now they're being asked to be YouTubers.
Yeah.
Like that. I don't know about you, but the average CPA program doesn't offer broadcast journalism as a minor.
No.
Or scripting, or how to light, or use your body.
Yeah, exactly. Or just communication, period. Right? Like, yeah.
There are some great programs out there. Actually, I was recently approached by the Wharton School to do some training for an individual in the MBA program who is from another country. So she's Chinese. And so if you were to ask, again, back to your question, what are the challenges? I work with a lot of people whose first language is not English, and they feel an additional pressure to be able to establish themselves as credible and intelligent. And sometimes they'll choose strategies like speaking faster because they want to appear more fluent, or using really big technical words because they want to be treated like someone who is an expert, which is what they are. So we have all these compensation type strategies, which don't always serve us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. And particularly what you just pointed out there, sometimes people using big words, and that actually can derail the conversation and the connection, because again, you got to know who your audience is, right? If you're talking to a group of techies and you're talking techie, that's one thing. But if you have a mixed group of people, you're like different planet conversation.
That's it. And I think that's really challenging. I usually give a little speechette, a little lecturette, particularly to people in finance or technology, because the way, if they come through engineering, if they come through commerce or accounting, economics, the way that we are trained is you get part marks for showing all of your math, right? Yeah. I think back to geometry, traumatically, I think back to geometry because I was not good at it. And I know if you had to prove that, if you had to prove something was an isosceles triangle, you had to prove with several lines of proof. Then you got to put the three little dots and say, therefore, this is an isosceles triangle. I know that because I never got those part marks because I wasn't good at geometry. So you go through this training, or let's say you are used to logging your scientific results in a logbook. You're used to showing the math. So especially for those people who have gone through a technical training where they got compensated, it starts getting built into your identity that the way I am is showing my math and explaining it down to a small detail, because otherwise they're not going to believe me. So it's really about unhooking that belief so that they can be free of the tyranny of data. It's just like, no, you can put that in the appendix. No, you don't have to use the big words. You could use a small metaphor. Why don't you use a colored, model with 3 pieces to it to explain what you're talking about? Because even if you've got people who are subject matter experts listening, I feel they're human first.
Oh, sure, of course.
If you've been sitting through 6 hours of video presentations, the last thing you want at 3:00 in the afternoon is listening to someone spin long multisyllabic words in long complex sentences.
Yeah, exactly.
Put me to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Like going off camera, it's like, here's your response. It's like, okay, bye. Hi. Yeah. It's like, I don't want to listen to that.
Yeah, exactly. So why are some people really good at it and others struggle? Like, what are you finding?
Well, I don't tend to work with the really great people. Like the people natural.
Okay, fair enough.
I've had complete absence of success with people who are just killing it. No, in fact, I do get the range. There are people who are unconsciously really competent at what they do, and and they want to get even better.
Yeah.
And then the people who struggle, I think it's a combination of things. You've got your natural ability, right? Some people, my dad was a football player in the CFL. He was able to throw a football with a spin on it. I'm his daughter. Does that mean that I can throw a football with a spin on it? No. That's not translatable necessarily. So I think there's some natural ability. I have here a couple of books that I was thinking I might reference. One of my favorite authors is Carol Dweck. And I'm a huge fan of hers. I read this years ago. And she talks about having a mindset that is flexible, that it's not the idea that you come out and you're fully baked and that's it. That's all you can do. We can always improve and change. So I think the people who struggle are probably the ones that I don't even see, that they've decided that they're just not good at this, and they didn't get the gift, and they'd rather eat a big ball of tinfoil than do a presentation. And I guess they're going to try and avoid it as much as they can and kind of fly under the radar. And that's a really painful place to be. I mean, we've all done things where we've avoided looking silly or feeling like we're stupid. But I think those people who are really struggling and they're not able to reach out for help, I think they're being trapped by a mindset and then just some really clear training. I mean, tell me, during the pandemic, have you not seen some amazing tips, like cooking tips, like how to peel avocados, or there's like 53 different ways you can get the seeds out of one of those pomegranates.
Yeah, exactly.
And as soon as you see that, it's like, and you always see the posts, I was X years old when I learned that I could do this. I think a lot of what I bring to the table is I've got 25 years of those crazy, amazing tips that could just save you so much time if you just knew that thing.
Yeah.
So the struggle is partly our mindset, and the struggle is not knowing how to actually do the thing, because no one's ever shown us, as you said, where do you get this training? I didn't get it. I had to.
Yeah, me either. Me either. And I think that's a real miss, because, you know, whether we like doing it or not, there's always moments that you have to speak up, right? Whether it's in your community, it's at your kid's school, it's at work, like there's all kinds of different situations that come up. And so I think it's, you know, it's important for people to invest in themselves and gain that confidence to be able to, you know, to get up and speak in public. I remember when I think I was 13 or 14. I was 13, and I was in this. Okay, I'm telling stories now, Liz.
Okay, this is story time. Lay it on.
I was in this beauty pageant. It was a Miss Teen Virginia pageant, and it was a scholarship type pageant. And I had to get up and do a speech in front of 3,500 people. Oh, wow. I know.
That's a big audience.
It was a big audience, and I did it on The American Woman. And my mother was, I know, right? And you think about what I did, the work I do now, and I was 13. Oh, wow. And my mother was literally in the audience having a heart attack because she could not even imagine me being up on stage in front of all these people. And I was the youngest person there, because everybody else was like 17, 18. And I was up there doing this speech, and I was terrified. I was terrified out of my mind being up there. But it was really important to me because I wanted the scholarship. Right. And I didn't win or anything like that, but that was okay. It was the experience, because I pushed myself to like go out there and do it. And sure, somebody could have been sitting in the audience and saying, oh my God, what is that girl talking about? But that didn't matter. It gave me confidence to be able to talk to anybody after that, right? Because you're young and you experience those things, but that's not common. Most people they would rather, I don't know, like whatever, pick up garbage than have to get up and speak in the public. But this translates to lots of things. And I just want to tap into some of your other expertise, like interviews, right? Like people are afraid to share, you know, what is my expertise? Because especially women in particular. And I want to highlight that, because I'm not, but a lot of women are afraid to express what their gifts are, what their strengths are. And so, speaking is speaking. And so it's, the work you're doing is so critical to help them be able to do that. And so, I guess where I want to round that out is, how do you get people to invest in themselves so that they can have that voice and speak up?
Well, if I could figure out how to get people to do anything, really, I would definitely, I'd be on an island somewhere. I mean, I'm saying that partly tongue in cheek. Yes, I do work in the field of influence and persuasion, but let's face it, like, have you ever tried to get someone to stop smoking? Or
Yeah, that's a
have you
good
ever,
point.
like, I have enough time, a hard enough time getting myself to do things. So, how to get, I would, maybe I'd play with the wording a little bit. It's like, I would be really curious for people to ask themselves what would be the value for them. And I think it's a very individual thing. You mentioned women and networking and interview skills. I've been coaching this week a lovely woman in Germany. And she actually this morning, I'll have to check in with her later today, did a 10-minute speed networking session with senior management in the organization. One of the ways they raise the profile of women is to give them these opportunities to meet the executive. So we've spent almost 6 hours prepping her for this 10-minute, it's kind of an interview slash being on a talk show host slash social event and media. It's this really weird amalgam of all of these things, which is what interviews are. And what we did was a couple of things. Stop getting her to say the word we. She would talk about her team. Well, we did this when we were in Moscow and we launched it. And I said, your team sounds fabulous. Can I hire your team? And she's like, oh, I mean, I. And so that's something I frequently point out to people who've worked in corporate a long time, is we've been, socialized to make sure we give credit. And certainly as women, we're even more sensitive about being the tall poppy and giving credit where it's due, because we've been persecuted in the past for claiming our success. So to be able to say, well, I did this and I'm good at this. I put a lot of statements in front of her, like, what I really enjoy doing is, what I'm good at is, what I'd like to do more of is. So a lot of I and emotive statements. And then really got her to look at her values and be able to tell stories that illustrate. So if you're going to say, for example, that you want to be a leader and you want to work with people, she talked about the fact that she taught fencing, with the swords to kids and help them compete.
That's brave.
And the satisfaction of, so all of a sudden when you tell a story, now you can see the people in the, the masks, and they've got you can sort of picture fencing. That's going to stay in your mind. If you've got 15 people that you're talking to, you're going to remember that individual as, oh, she did fencing, or Argentine tango was another dance that she got. And that's a very specific, very hard dance to do. So the opportunity is to share who you are with people in a way that's authentic so that you can be seen. And so I would ask listeners to think about, how, if they're looking to be more promotable, how can they be better known? Because when I'm thinking about people that I want to connect to, if I know that Vicki is an expert in retail and she's told me some stories about her experiences in managing and doing marketing, you're going to be top of mind. I've got you filed in my brain with a story. And so I'm really an enthusiastic champion of people using story. And so when you talk about investing in themselves to overcome the fear of public speaking, what if I told you you never had to do a speech again ever in your life? Like, how cool would that be, right? I think most people would be like,
Sign me up.
Sign me up. I actually don't like the word presentation. I don't like the word presentation any more than I like the word performance or show or the word budget, actually, frankly. I prefer spending plan when we're talking about finance, because for me, there's a lot of nested meaning.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
instead of investing in public speaking, what if they were to invest in connecting? Or I prefer having conversations. This technically, what we're doing right now is a podcast. And I can tell you, yesterday when I was printing up, my notes and getting prepared, I was doing a little number on myself. Oh, I got to get ready for the podcast. I got to hold the podcast tomorrow, Vicky's podcast. And I mean, there are going to be people listening on the podcast. It was like every time, it was like sticking a poker into my head. And I was just making myself more and more nervous. This morning I woke up and I thought, this is a conversation. This is no different than what I do with people for AGMs or job interviews. Let's just connect. Let's have a conversation and let it unfold. And I've got ideas that I might bring to the table. I've got some books I've prepared, but I don't need to rigidly, it's not like a pasta machine where I'm going to turn it out. We're going to get uniform linguine coming out. That's just never worked for me.
Love it. Love it. Well, that takes a lot of the pressure off, I think. And that's a really good way to express that, because I think, you when we first started talking, you were sharing how much pressure you put on yourself, performing in classical music. And I think we do that. And there's an element to that that's good, because it shows that you care and you want to show up in a, your best possible way. But take some pressure off yourself, right? Like, just have a conversation. What can you learn? What can you take away from that conversation, getting curious with somebody? So I'm a firm believer in that. I think that's it's such an impactful and important way to connect with someone, because you're connecting on a deeper level. It's not, oh, I have this message I need to get out. So you really are genuinely connecting.
Well, I think, we could have done this whole podcast in 3 minutes if I just said, well, take the pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
And there will be people listening going, well, great. Thanks a lot, Liz. Like, I'll get right on that. Not like I've been trying to do that for the last X number of years. Sometimes it's helpful to work with someone. Like I work with a trainer, because I'm not motivated enough to go and push myself in the gym to stretch the muscle to where I needed to. I'll back right off.
Yeah.
Those of us who have done yoga classes, I mean, yoga is a practice where it's designed to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You have to sit with the discomfort. So if people are also struggling, I think for a lot of people, especially the more senior that they get, it can feel like they've left it too late. Like, like I don't want to let anyone see that I've made it this far, and I really don't feel like I've got game. And I think that's a real pressure. I think some of the hardest cases that I've had to work with are people who've left it, well-meaningly, until the stakes are really high. Yeah. But the good news situation is they don't have to suffer through it. It's not, nothing is irretrievable. I can think in 25 years, I can count on maybe 2 or 3 fingers the number of people who were so severely constrained by their mindset and the pressure that they simply couldn't perform. And that's literally over thousands of people that I've worked with now. So it's a very, very small proportion. There is room for growth for pretty much everybody. That's my experience.
100%. Well, and if we stop growing, what's left, right? Like, I mean, it's always learning and growing and pushing yourself. So we have just maybe a minute or 2 left here. So I want to make sure, like, what would be 1 or 2 tips that you would want to share with our audience that they could walk away with today and implement just to stretch them a little bit, or to help them grow in their speaking abilities?
Great. Well, one of my favorites is, I call it the after lasagna dinner breath, and I'm going to demonstrate it for you here. What people can do is sit back from their chairs and their tables and put your hands on your rib cage and take in a slow, deep breath through the mouth, so that you're thinking of going wide instead of up and down. So we don't want to jumping into the swimming pool breath, like, which a lot of people think is like, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about these things, and I'm talking really fast and I'm running out of breath, and now I'm going to take another breath. Wide and slow. So let's just take a moment and do that now. And I'll demonstrate breathing in through the mouth. And then let it go. It was that slow. So don't worry if you didn't get it. We'll do it again. Breathing in. The reason I say mouth open is I found from my flute teaching days, when people breathe through their noses, a lot of people have done yoga, we tend to inflate the upper chest cavity first, which
that's a good point.
That's created a whole bunch of tension. Now we're going to get some expansion through here. That's fine. We just don't want to go there first. So we're thinking of going here and breathing in. And let it out. And if you do that 3 times before you get on a call, you're going to find that your eyes relax, your face relaxes, you start feeling your limbs again, the adrenaline calms down a bit, because part of what we're dealing with is adrenaline, cortisol, a little biochemistry going on, just to ground yourself. That's one of my favorite tips for getting people comfortable. And then the second one, well, hands on the hips, then let's borrow from Amy Cuddy, which is, if you want to look up Amy Cuddy, Cuddy, if you haven't seen her TED Talk on power poses.
Yes,
yeah, making yourself big. So putting your hands on your hips in the Wonder Woman pose or the Superman pose, doing that for 2 minutes, and you're literally changing the mix of testosterone and cortisol in your body to give you the advantage of confidence. So like a well-mixed martini. Okay, we don't want too much of either. We want a good mix. So your ultimate martini is here. So you could start with the breathing, switch to the hips. There's 4 minutes before you get on.
That's awesome. Wow, Liz, those are both great tips. And I love that, especially the breathing, because the first time I did it, the shoulders went up and it's like, and then when you said, no, let it go out, right? Like that really does center you and ground you so that you're ready to. So thank you for that. I actually have a big talk at 11 o'clock today. So, so thank you for that. I'll use that. So I want to thank you for sharing your time with us today, your expertise. I mean, you've done so many amazing things and you've worked with some, incredible companies, and love the fact that you helped, Dragon's Den, to the contestants, secure some funding, which is awesome. So, maybe in the chat, you can just put in how people can connect you and say it out loud so that, because I'm sure there's people in our audience that are saying, okay, like, I want to do that. So maybe just share what your website is with everybody.
Absolutely. You can find me at manifestconsulting.ca. I am based in Canada, but I do work globally. And the name is Liz Radzick. And my number is 416-407-3235.
Awesome. Awesome. Come find Liz.
Come find me.
Yeah, especially like if you've got, a big talk that you've got to do, or if you're preparing for a TED Talk, or you've got an interview coming up, or, you're head of a company and you're getting ready to do your annual general meeting, like Liz can help with all of those things. So Liz, thank you again from the bottom of my heart. I am so grateful having you here today and sharing, and you put a lot of funniness into it and make you think like, oh yeah, it doesn't have to be so scary, which is awesome. I love that. And you're right, the storytelling humanizes the conversation so that it's not so scripted, and people can relate so much better. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vicki.
And I want to thank our audience. Thank you. We know you have a choice as to, there's many podcasts out there where you have a choice as to who you listen to. So we thank you for chiming in today and sharing this conversation that we've had with Liz. And I want to thank you and invite you to come to our next podcast, where we'd be excited to have you here. And I want to thank our sponsor for today's podcast, Bonhill Group. They do conferences and they're coming to Canada in October 20th. They will be hosting their 4th annual summit for women in technology. And it promises to be a very impactful event, offering a series of discussions and fireside chats. And always is a great opportunity to network and meet other amazing individuals. So hopefully you will, have a look out for Women in Technology Summit, sponsored by the Bond Hill Group. So thank you, Bond Hill, for sponsoring this conversation today. We greatly appreciate you and your investment in us. And again, everyone, thank you so much. Liz, thank you. And we will chat with you very soon. Take care.